Hello and welcome. You're listening to the Bump Podcast, a place for the believers of the unexplained, monsters, and paranormal. Join us, and we'll go face to face with what goes bump in the night.
Hey there, believers. I got a great episode for you this week. This one's different. This is good. Not that they're not all good. I mean, they're all good, but I like this. I'm bringing on Brandy and Dave together. I don't know if they want their last names said yet or not. I don't think it's a problem, but just to make sure, I'm bringing them on together. Dave was on Tony's show, The Confessionals, on episode 426 to talk about his experiences. Now, when he did that, he did not reach out to Tony. His wife did. And much the same, his wife has reached out to this show to share their experiences and to bring Dave to talk about his stuff. I think they they're going through things together, but I believe they have two different ideas maybe as to what's going on. And I'm super interested in this. We're going to get into the Salem Witch Trials. Dave's apparently related to one of the first alleged witches. Also, we're going to get into his personal experiences and her experiences here the last few years too. Fascinating topic. I listened to just about 15 minutes of him when he was on Tony's show. I didn't want to go any further because I like to have things revealed to me for the first time. I don't like to do too much of a background check. I like to learn it as the audience is learning it. You know what I mean? So it makes for a more authentic show. And I cannot wait to get this one started. Also, since you're here and you probably got a device somewhere near you, please be sure to leave me a 5-star rating and review on no matter what you listen to it on. If it's Spotify, if it's Apple, whatever, I would greatly appreciate that 5-star review. It helps to stay up in the rankings and the ratings. And that's the lifeblood of this stuff, to stay in the charts, to stay current, that and sharing the show. So if you could share the show, go ahead, give it a 5-star review. Share it on social media if you want to. Send it to your friends that you think might like weird stuff. Send it to your friends that you think are Christians and would want to hear this kind of content. Send it to your friends who absolutely refuse to believe in anything. And let's see if we can chip away and open them up to believing in the unexplained, monsters, and paranormal. Okay. Because it's a very supernatural world that we live in. And I'm just excited to be a part of it. And I'm excited to share your stories. That's all I'm doing here. You guys are contacting me for the most part. Sometimes I reach out if I find something interesting, like I did with Megan on TikTok and with several others, with Vicky Joy Anderson and Gary Wayne and them. I get things that I'm fond of as well, and I like to talk about these things. So I bring them on and share the conversation with you guys, and I hope that it's going to continue to be successful. It's been great. We're closing in on 4 years soon. Actually, we're about 3.5 years in right now. It's been wonderful watching the show grow, take its own direction almost right out of the gate. And it's just progressed as we uncover things, as we learn things, and dots are getting connected. For years I've said everything's connected, and how true that's proven to be as more things are revealed to us. there's an episode I want you guys to check out that I was on Appalachian Intelligence. If you haven't listened to it yet, please go to Appalachian Intelligence Podcast and look at one of their more recent episodes. It wasn't that long ago. They've got my name listed on it, and it's about Bigfoot and about Lilith. I'll probably share something of this extent on my show as well, but I was a guest on theirs, and I just unloaded lots of thoughts, and we just spitballed all together, and it was wonderful. I loved it. I was glad to be a part of that, and I just want to thank you guys again for bringing me on that show. All right, I'll stop babbling. Let's bring on Brandy and Dave and jump into this really good story. Let's go.
And good afternoon. It's been an interesting day. Just found out that I'm going to be on a podcast talking a little expanded story time about my life growing up. One of the things that I think is interesting, and I spend a fair amount of time up in the Boston area. I travel a lot. Is a distant relative of ours named Bridget Bishop was the first witch that was hanged at trial, accused and hanged. And I had no idea of this as a child. Found out later in life through some research, and it started answering some questions for me as far as attachments and things that my grandmother would talk about. My grandmother used to scare the bejesus out of us as kids by telling us that witchcraft ran in her family, and that her aunts and her two sisters were all witches, and they were practicing witches. And she would tell us stories about them. And I mean, we would just be terrified, which kind of led into me later in life. I was 5 and 6 at the time, so I didn't really pay a lot of attention. But I also had an experience with Hat Man in my bedroom growing up. And I just figured everybody experienced something like that. I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to wanting to tell people about it. I didn't want to share that information. I was terrified at night. This guy was there every single night. It didn't matter how I adjusted the light in my room. Didn't matter if I had a stereo that was on or off. Didn't matter if I closed my blinds and sealed everything. I could see him standing in the same place every night. He was darker than dark. So you could turn all the light out. You could still make out the figure. And he was there consistently every single night from the time I was probably in, 6th grade up until I went to high school and we moved. And that particular figure did not relocate with us, but he was in that particular house.
Wow.
And I really never told anybody about it. And then here we are, 35 years later, and you've got all these paranormal shows on, and we're watching TV one night, and there's a whole expose that and I think it was Ghost Adventures or somebody that was talking about a Hat Man, and I just the hair on the back of my neck stood up. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. I had this thing when I was a kid that was exactly that. So then I got into really delving into what the theories are of Hat Man, and whether or not, if we're living in a simulation, is Hat Man an observer? Are they the observers that come in and watch, and the NPCs that are there? So there's been a little research on what the theory is around a Hat Man and why they're there and what their purpose is. But nothing definitive. And Brandy and I had that conversation after we saw the show. I said, you won't believe this, but growing up, I had this in my bedroom for years, and I was terrified every night of it. And then I kind of got used to it, but it was there every single night.
Sometimes it was wearing a hat, sometimes it wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes hat, sometimes not, but most of the time there was a hat associated with it, and this figure was just denser and darker than the dark. And I slept with the darkest room possible, and you can still see this thing.
Wow. Okay. That's, you came out firing and I love it, man. Yeah, I want to get into this hat man, but first let me back up to your grandmother here.
Mhm.
Now, she had these stories about her aunt.
Her
and
aunts,
sisters.
she had aunts that were twin sisters, and they were both practicing witches, and they lived in rural eastern Kentucky. And she would tell a story about, you live and die back then by your livestock. And they had a milk cow. And she told a story about how she woke up one morning and one of her aunts was this little tiny figure and had the pointed hat on sitting on her chest and told her she needed to get up. Her cow was sick in the field and she needed to go tend to it. Otherwise, the cow was going to die. And she thought, this is crazy. But she got up, she got dressed, she went out. Sure enough, the cow was sick. They were able to save the cow, get the cow back into the barn, and life went on. But it was a big deal because that was, basically one of their only sources of nutrition. And she told this story, and I had heard it half a dozen times. And she would talk about how they were practicing witches, and they would cast spells on people, and that you would have attachments. Every third generation would see things and experience things. And I'm in that third generation. So it terrified the hell out of me. I'm like, I'm in this group of people. And, sure enough, as I went through life, I would have experiences that other people wouldn't necessarily have. And, Brandy had never experienced anything like this until we got together. And we'll get into some stories, but there are some things that happen that just defy logic. We came home from a dance recital one night, and our game room, we had a game room that was up on the second story, and we came home and I collect a lot of art by Michael Bedard. And I don't know if you're familiar with Sitting Duck. There's a Sitting Duck painting that's real famous, and the duck's sitting back and he's in a lawn chair and he's all comfortable at the beach and he's got 2 bullet holes by his head. So that was his first painting, Sitting Duck. And then there's Ship of Fools and there's Fly or Die. There's all these things. So I collected this art throughout the years and we put it in our game room. We get home from this dance recital and we walk upstairs where the girls' bedrooms are. And all of that artwork, and they were on safety clips. You can't just take this art off the wall. It's mounted. You have to, it takes a pair of needle nose pliers. You got to release it. You got to take it out. Every piece of that artwork was down and sitting nicely on the floor.
Oh, no.
And we were just freaked out.
We thought someone broke in.
Yeah.
The house.
Yeah.
That would be my first thought, too. That is insane.
The crazy part is, it was right after my dad had passed away. And I think, he's the kind of jokester that would absolutely do something like that. And our youngest daughter would tell us, she was 2 years old at the time and, really didn't have a good understanding of, relationships and people. She spent some time with my parents, but she would tell us every day that Papaw came in and he tells me goodnight, kisses me on the head every night. Every night she would tell us that. And we're like, okay. And then our artwork, gets put on the ground. And he was a prankster. We grew up and we had ongoing battles. You remember the Pink Panther? I don't know if you're old enough.
Yeah.
Pink Panther, where you would get sneak attacked, so we would sneak attack each other all the time. And we had a pie in the face contest. So at the most inopportune time, I'd be walking out and going on a date, going somewhere, and I'd get a pie to the face and he would get the same. So we had these long running pranks and jokes and things like that. And, that's right in his wheelhouse to do something like that, just to freak us out.
Yeah. A little parting gift, right?
Yeah. And that went on
For a year.
We had things like that went on for a good solid year. And then it kind of slowed down. It could be toys that would move themselves and walk around or, make noises. It was wild.
I was home by myself one day working, and our daughter was, a toddler or whatever. And she had this dog that you stick in water, and when you stick it in water, it'll bark and move, but it has to be in water. The dog was sitting on top of the tub and started barking and moving. And then every single toy she had in the floor all turned on at the same time.
Oh, no way.
Every single one of them.
Did you run out of there?
I wanted to. It freaked me out.
Yeah, that would be pretty creepy.
Yeah, it was scary. Yeah. And our dog, we had a Great Dane at the time that he would just that low growl, that scary low growl. He would just stare at this corner of our room and just his hair would spike, the hair would stand up and he would do that low growl. Nothing was there, but he saw something.
Wow.
Yeah. Super protective, super receptive, nicest dog in the world. But every day while I was gone, he would go to that corner and do that
And just
low
stare at that corner and growl.
Let's see. Yeah, everybody knows that now. That animals, they have that sense, that they can pick up on that, and I trust that 100%.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So anything we thought, well, this is my imagination, or this is just a coincidence, what hit with him doing that, it kind of enforced something was really going on there.
Yeah, that would provide some confirmation for sure.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
Hey, you said your grandmother and them, they were from Eastern Kentucky.
Right.
It's very interesting to me. I am very close to Eastern Kentucky.
Okay.
They're
from Olive Hill, the Mammoth Cave area.
Mammoth Cave. There you go. Okay. Yeah, I'm maybe an hour away.
Okay.
Maybe an hour away from there, Olive Hill. I'm in Logan County, West Virginia. So if you're familiar at all with that area, it's coal country.
Yep.
I worked in the coal mines before I went back to school and became a teacher. So I've got a pretty weird story too, man. But if her aunt was a witch, or aunts were witches, and her sisters were witches, did she not get into witchcraft too?
She said she did not get into it. She always called spectrals or ghosts or whatever. She called them haints.
Haints,
And I had never heard that term before, but that was the term she always used. She said haints. And she had a million stories about haints. And it used to scare us.
I guarantee it. That's my penis right there, man.
She would sit and spin tales, and we would just watch her and listen and be mesmerized. Yeah, she was a good storyteller, but all these stories came from her experiences being a kid through adulthood.
Yeah, and over here in Appalachia, you're kind of, there's a unique blend with folklore and home remedies and backwoods witchcraft is what they call it.
Right.
But they'll use Bible verses, they'll use scripture to stop bleeding. Like if somebody cuts themselves or they're hurt bad, they'll pray over them, use scripture, and it'll stop the bleeding. Or they'll say a verse. If somebody burns themselves, they'll say a verse and they'll blow on it. And that'll stop the burn, and it's like some people think it's superstitious, but
a lot of superstition, a lot of old wives' tales. She had all of it. She was packed full of all of it. So your left hand's itching. You're going to get money. If your right hand's itching, you're going to shake hands with a stranger. All those things came from her. If your nose is itching, you're going to meet somebody new today. That kind of.
Tell me about your experiences with your sister.
Oh, my youngest sister and I, we would be home alone. My parents would be working, and all kinds of strange things would happen. We lived in a single wide trailer when we first moved to Florida, and we shared a pull-out couch in the living room. And there's a faucet that was in the kitchen that was directly across from us. And that faucet would turn on by itself all the time. We'd have to go turn it off, and it would turn, and then we'd have to threaten each other. You go turn it off. No, you go turn it off. And then you go turn it off. And you could chalk that up to being water pressure, something happening in the line causing that faucet to turn on and off. But then chairs would move, refrigerator would open. I mean, all kinds of crazy things that would happen and have us just terrified. And this could be in the middle of the day. It didn't have to be at night. It wasn't at bedtime or anything in particular. It was constant. And my parents always said they thought that place was haunted, that the previous occupants abused their kids or something. And I don't know if that's true or not, but I just know what our experiences were. And we were terrified a lot of the times in that place.
Yeah. Did your sister, did she see the Hat Man too?
No.
It was just for you.
Not that I'm aware of. I've never talked to her about it. I don't know. That's a good question.
You got to open up, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, good luck with that.
All right. So when you're in the bed, was the Hat Man like watching you in bed? Was it in the closet? Like, what was he?
He was in the corner of the room, and he was just there. He was just present. Never moved, never saw eyeballs, nothing like that. It was just, he was in the shape of a man wearing just a triangulated hat. And he was there all the time.
Like a tri-quarter hat? Like
not a tri-quarter hat. He just had like a low brim.
Okay.
That came across, and it was not a cowboy hat, but more of, I don't know, like a gangster's,
like a fedora
kind of hat, with a thin brim.
Yep. Gotcha.
And I always thought, I heard that the lady that lived in that house previously, her husband was working on a toaster and electrocuted himself. And I always thought it was him, and in my mind, that's who it was. And I don't even know if that story is true. I was just told that story. I don't know if it was actually true or not, but that's what my brain associated him with, was that it was just that guy keeping an eye on the place. And that's how I rationalized
it. Right. Did the fear ever subside? Like you would wake up and he'd be there and like, oh yeah, what's up?
Yeah. I mean, it was one of those things where you go kind of comfortable with it. And I would wake up in the middle of the night, pull the covers down to see, and yep, there he is, still there. Wow. Yeah. And that went on for the better part of 4 years.
And you said when you moved, I was careful to listen. You said that particular, right? That particular entity, he stayed back.
Exactly.
Right.
So, what came with you, Dave?
I'm not sure, but something came with me. It wasn't a Hat Man or one that I've noticed. We've progressively grown into much larger homes, and it's impossible to do the things that I did there to block out the light. But I know that I've always had something with me. I don't know if you want to call it an attachment. I don't know if you want to call it a guardian angel. I don't know, and it's funny because not long ago I was in an Admiral's Club at an airport, and there were two nuns, and one was in a habit, one was in plain clothes, and they were there, and I thought, you know what? I've got a couple hours to kill. They're not doing anything. Let me have a quick conversation with them. Yeah. So I was in a motorcycle accident, 1994. Lady ran me over. And as I'm getting up and I walk over to the side of the street and I sit down, there's two nuns at a bus station waiting for like a city bus, and they have shopping bags in their hands. They're in full habits, fully dressed. So I'm sitting there having a conversation with them going, holy crap, did you see that? and we're having this conversation. They said, oh, you're going to be fine. Everything's okay. People are coming to help you. And we had a full conversation. Ambulance gets there, first responders get there, everybody's there. They're like, did anybody see this? And I said, the two nuns that were at the bus stop, I had a full conversation with them. They saw everything. And they said, there are no nuns. There were no nuns there. And I'm thinking, am I crazy? I know I had a conversation with them. I'm fully lucid. I was fully awake. But I had the conversation with these nuns not even 6 months ago. And I said, let me tell you a story. And one of them started laughing, and she goes, those were your guardian angels to make sure that you felt secure. And I said, so are those same people in like habits or in that dress? Are they the ones that are with me all the time? And she says, no, they'll change form depending on what you need in the moment. And I thought, well, why would I need nuns at that moment? I'm not Catholic, you know? And she laughed and she goes, I don't know, but at that time, that's what you needed. And I said, okay, good enough.
Yeah. But do you have like an inherent trust of nuns? Like, those sweet ladies won't lie to you? And
No, I grew up hearing some not so nice stories about nuns. I'm a retired cop. I've heard a lot of stuff. And you get into things that you go, I've never been a big fan of the Catholic religion, so I know I wouldn't manifest a nun or a priest as my savior.
right. Wow.
Yeah.
But there they were.
Yeah, there they were, plain as day. I know I had a conversation with them. I know they were there.
Now, you do have a cat, right?
Yes. Sorry.
Okay. No, I was just making sure. Like looking over his left shoulder, like, well, nuns weren't really there.
He's very nosy.
If our Dane could get up there and do the same thing, he would.
Yeah. Oh man. So you may have an attachment, you say, maybe some sort of guardian angel. What was with you when you moved that made you think that there's more going on?
I don't know if it's a what is more. It's almost like it's just an energy, I think, that follows me and always has. I've got a weird thing where traffic lights go off when I stand under the traffic light, just things like that. And it's constant, and it's been consistent from the time I was little, where I would notice these things. I'd be out in the street, light bulbs that just burn out when I'm around them. Yeah. And it's funny, I donated blood today, and I have a really high iron content. And the guy that was doing the donation work, he tells me, he goes, do you experience a lot of static electricity? And I said, dude, you have no idea. This time of year, as we get into the cold months, I get near anything and there's a 2-inch blue spark that follows with me, everything I touch. And he said, yeah, he goes, everybody that I've ever talked to that had iron as high as yours, they have that same kind of thing going on.
Really?
And I was thinking, you have no idea. I got a lot of things going on.
A lot more than just iron.
I don't know if it's iron content. I don't know if it's an energy attachment. I don't know what it is. But as I've gotten older, I just got used to it, and I really hadn't paid much attention to it until Brandy and I got married, and then all these, these weird things started happening. Well, they didn't just start happening. They've been happening to me my whole life. She was just now partnered into it.
Yeah. She's like, hey, pay attention.
What's going on here? Yeah.
Yeah. This makes no sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's get into some of it. Tell me some of these things that have went on that you guys have noticed.
Oh my goodness. Where do we begin?
Yeah. I don't even, we can start recently.
Yeah.
Last year we went to Las Vegas, and of course Brandy books us the VIP tour.
R.I.P.
The R.I.P. tour, I guess is what they call it at the Zach Bagans Museum.
Oh wow.
And, you get behind the scenes, you get in the back room of a lot of stuff, and you see stuff that the normal public really doesn't get access to. So one thing they do is they line you up, and you're supposed to follow directions, first of all.
But he doesn't.
That's my downfall. I kind of walk my own path, and you line up, and there's a certain way you're supposed to shuffle by this Peggy doll. It's supposed to be haunted. You're not supposed to look her in the eyes. You're not supposed to pay any attention to her. You're just kind of supposed to go by and look at her aura, I guess. I did it all wrong. I went right up to her, right to the glass, looked her right in the face, didn't pay much attention to it. I get out, and Brandy's like, you didn't look her in the face, did you? So she had blue eyes.
At her.
Yeah, she had blue eyes. I looked her right in the face. So that night, we get back to our room. We're all settled in. She gets all snuggled up, and she goes, your heart's beating weird. My heartbeat for a solid year was off.
Wow.
I went to a really irregular heartbeat, really, really, really strange. I had to go to the doctor, and he checked it out, and he goes, everything looks normal except this. So, she hits me with sage and holy water and who knows what else. And I've re-regulated now, but it took a year of, going through that. And it's funny because at the end of the tour, they were telling us, do not look this doll in the face because people have had heart attacks that have done this. And I'm like, oh, now you tell me. Thanks. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and he still has issues. It's not as bad now. He's on blood pressure medication and all that. So it's much better. But I was so concerned that I got holy water. I didn't tell him I did this. I got holy water and I sprinkled it on his side of the bed and did a little prayer. And as soon as he went to bed that night, he closed his eyes for maybe 5 minutes and said, oh my goodness, I keep seeing these visions of this evil clown floating around my face. Right?
Again, another experiment I was not party to, had no idea what was going on.
I love that. Like she's troubleshooting you for demons.
Oh yeah. She's always willing to help. But yeah, crazy dreams, for at least 2 nights, and then they subsided.
Yeah.
But I still think there's something still attached to him.
Yeah. I mean, if it has that kind of response.
Yeah.
Kind of reaction.
Absolutely. Because every now and then I'll do the holy water, or I'll say a little prayer about the attachment. If you're attached, get out. And inevitably, he just gets cranky. We start arguing, or he'll get snippy with me every time I've done it. So, I thought, well, maybe once or twice that's an anomaly, or that's just a coincidence. But it's been 6 or 7 times now. And every single time I've done it,
okay,
there's been a reaction of some sort. Yeah.
And some of the crazy things that I've dealt with that I really, as a kid were kind of normal to me, is I would have nightmares at 4 and 5 years old, and I can remember it like it was yesterday. And I would go get into bed with my parents. And my mom had a certain way she would kind of get me on the edge of the bed and put her arm around me. And one night I was laying in that bed, and I kid you not, there were a swirl of specters going around the ceiling. And I mean, there were a lot. There were a dozen that were just swirling around the room. And I was terrified. And I kept waking her up. And she just kept telling me to go back to bed. She goes, just ignore it, go back to bed. So I'm not sure that she did not see this stuff and did not participate in what was going on. But she absolutely acted like, yes, it's there, ignore it, it's not going to hurt you.
Well, saying ignore it sounds like she definitely knows something's there.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
So, we moved to Florida. We're in that same single wide that had all the crazy stuff that went on. So